Are you recording right now?
Not yet.
Okay. So, ready to go see the boss? I'm retired professional triathlete, TJ Tollakson, and CEO of Dimond Bikes. And today we're talking about one-by systems. What the heck is a one-by system? Do I need a one-by system? Should I use a one-by system? And probably the biggest question I hear about it is, am I going to run out of gears climbing with a one-by system?
Juicy questions.
Let's dive in and talk about it. So what I have right here is a 1x SRAM red cork power meter. This is super sweet. It is one piece, aluminum machine, really cool. This is a crank arm. It's super modular, so if you want to change your chainring or your crank arms, you can do those independently. And the other big thing, 1x chainrings only come in even numbers. The reason being is they need a narrow wide tooth pattern to make sure that the chain stays on the chainring all the time.
That's important.
No 53 1x chainring is in existence. You can get 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56. That's probably about as big as you're gonna see. That's kind of what it looks like, a SRAM 1x crank. We will now hold up and I will show you the difference of these two chain rings between the SRAM 1x in my right hand and in my left hand, the Shimano 2x. You can see the teeth are a lot taller on this. This is a regular Ultegra 5339. So that's probably the most common chainring is 5339. That happens to be a 165 crank arm. You can see that the chain rings are removable, so if you wanted to change the chain ring size, you could. If you wanted to change the crank arm, you would get an entirely new crank. So in that aspect, I say I'm a big fan of the SRAM modular system because it does make it really easy.
You got my vote, hombre.
Shimano recently announced they are now going to 12-speed. SRAM for the last year has been 12-speed. The one big benefit to SRAM's 12-speed is they go down to a 10-tooth cog, and so that really helps the math. Determining whether you should be using a 1x system really comes down to how good you are at math. No, it has nothing to do with how good you are at math, but it always comes down to math. And so luckily I happen to be a math geek, so I can break down some of this math for you and share with you my insights on if it's advantageous for you to use a 1x. And I'll give you an example of where I think it is useful, and I'll give you an example of where I think it is not useful. So to start out with, we will say that I am a big fan of the 10-tooth cog. Shimano has long said, hey, this is bogus, there's too much friction, chain friction at the 10-tooth cog, and I say that that's bogus.
Bogus.
Because if you use a really nice wax chain, like the ice friction chains that I use on my bike, it virtually eliminates that super tight coil friction that happens on a regularly lubed chain. So, what can I say? I like a 10-tooth cog. All right, so let's talk real quick about what the Cassette is on the back wheel. So this is a Cassette, this is a Cassette. They use two different hub driver bodies too. SRAM 1036, this is a rival 1036 12-speed Cassette. 10-tooth cog right here. So this smallest one has 10 teeth on it. How many teeth do you have in your mouth? I don't know. But 10 teeth on this small one, 36 on this big one. Obviously multiples in between here, but it goes 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 for sure. So that's what the SRAM Cassette looks like. Shimano uses Shimano's Hyperglide system. This is an 1128, so there are 11 teeth on this small cog and 28 on the large cog. Obviously everyone else is somewhere in between there. The same applies to the chain rings. The 48-tooth chain ring from SRAM means that there are 48 teeth around the outside. Same thing with Shimano's 53 teeth and 39 teeth. So the first thing that I do when I talk about math is I take this little sheet, and man, these numbers get little when you look at this. So I just do the math on this. I take cogs 10 all the way through 50 because a 1050 would be like the mountain bike equivalent that you would see on a SRAM bike, maybe a 1052. And then I have small ring of 34 and a large ring of 56 on this sheet. So if you were running a 10 tooth cog and a 56 chainring, that would give you a gear ratio of 5.6. Now, if you were running a 34 little chainring with a 50 tooth cog, you would have a 0.68 gear ratio. And so that means your cassette in the back has a much bigger cog on it, number of teeth, than the chainring in front. So anything less than 1 is going to be, that's going to be the case. So let's look at the common one for triathlon. I said 5339 is kind of the standard crank size for road. Obviously compacts have become more popular. We'll talk about those in a second. So if you have a 5339, and we're going to compare that to this right here, which is a 48 tooth SRAM. Okay, so a 5339 gives you in an 11 speed in Shimano. That's going to move to 12 speed here shortly, but I'll still kind of walk you through the math about why this makes sense.
So get off your ass, let's do some math.
So if you were going to run a 5339 and an 1128 cassette, which most would argue is enough gearing that you would need to climb just about anything, where might that differ? Okay, if you're seriously into climbing mountains and you don't have a lot of power or torque, you may need an easier gear, in which case you're probably not putting this on your time trial bike anyway. It's probably going on a designated climbing bike. So 53 divided by 11, which is the smallest Shimano goes, gives you 4.82. Now, the opposite side of that, the 39, the small ring, and the 28 gives you 1.39. Okay, so you have a range on that cassette and chainring combination of 4.82 to 1.39. Now, if we take a look at the SRAM, it's the same thing. Instead of 4.82, we're just going to take 48, divide that by the 10.2 small cog, and you're going to get 4.8. So yes, it is 0.02 smaller, 0.02 smaller than the gear ratio for the 5311.
You got there in the end.
But you're going to start out at 4.8, and then if you go down to the SRAM makes a 1036 road cassette, and they make a 1044 off-road cassette that you can still use, just need a different derailleur. But if you go to the 1036, it's more than plenty, because that's going to give you a ratio of 1.33, which is 0.06 smaller than the 3928. Yes, smaller. That gear is going to be easier with a 1036 than it would be with a 3928. So yeah, that's great. And a lot of people would say, yes, but I like all my little steps. I like all my little steps. And if I went from 22 gears down to 12 or 24 down to 12, am I going to have enough change? Whether you're in a 4810 or a 5311, the next gear is going to be one cog in the back higher. So you're going to go from a 5311 to a 5312 or a 4810 to a 4811. Now, it's really simple. 10 to 11 is just a 10% change, right? But 11 to 12 is not quite 10% change. That's a 9.05% change. A lot of people get this mixed up because they just see the cogs on the back and they think 11, 12, 13, 14. I want to have those as close together. Well, that's fine.
If that's what you guys want.
Okay, at the bottom end of the cassette, having those very close together means a lot because each of those are somewhat close to 10% or less, okay? But at the high end of the cassette, when you're talking about the difference between, say, 30 and 33, 30 to 33 is a 3-tooth jump, but it's only a 10% change, very similar from your 10 to your 11 or your 11 to your 12. So 4.8 is where we start. The next one is 4.36, which is 10% difference. Then we drop down to 4, which is 9.09. Then we drop to 3.69, which is 8.33. Then we drop to 3.43, 7.69. I don't need to go through all of these with you, but I'll just say the percentage difference. 10, 9, 8, 8, 7, 13, 12, 11, 14, 17, 14, 13. Rough. Okay, those are the percent changes you're gonna see in the SRAM 1x system. So what's it gonna look like if I jump over to the Shimano side? Well, I have 22, or soon to be 24, instead of my 12. So I got a lot smaller jumps, but I still have some big jumps in there. I got 9, 8, 8, 7, 1, 9, 4, 12, 0, 7, 3, 10, 0, 8, 3, 9, 2, 9, 9, 12. So you can see that I have several of these that are 0% changes. So 2.79 happens to be a 53.19 as well as a 39.14. So that's a duplicate gear.
What's going on here?
Then I also, the other one that was very close to that is I have a 2.3 and a 2.29. So the 2.3 is a 53.23 and the 2.29 is a 39.17. Basically the same gear. You probably don't want to shift that small. Maybe you do. Maybe you're that particular. Most people seem very comfortable. So that's the 53.39 side of it. Now, a lot of these people are gonna say, but I run a compact. And do you run a mid-compact or do you run a total compact? Because if you run a 50-34, I'm gonna go ahead and say, yes, you probably wanna stay with the double chainring. And here's why. So, if we look at the Shimano 50-34 compact, even an 11-speed, we go from a max of the 50-11 at 4.55 gear ratio, all the way down to 1.21. Now you gotta remember that in my other one, I had 1.33 on my 48-36. So I'm down to 1.28 if I drop my big chainring to 46 on the SRAM, but I'm still not gonna get to that 1.21, okay? So if climbing is super important to me, and I don't have a lot of power or a lot of torque, I'm probably gonna recommend you go with a 2x system. But I'll real quick run down what it looks like with a 46-10 compared to a 50-34 10-28 cassette. So the 46-10-36 looks like this in terms of gear changes. 10, 9, 8, 8, 7, 13, 12, 11, 14, 17, 14, 13. Now, when we go to the Shimano side, they're all going to be a little bit smaller, but we're gonna be at 9, 8, 8, 7, 7, 5, 12, 0, 8, 2, 5, 5, 9, 0, 12, 0, 10, 9, 9, 12.
Could you repeat that?
So you see, I do have, basically I do right there, there's 3 zeros that happen in this gear range. And so those zeros, again, redundant gears, you're probably not going to be using them. But you can see, whereas my max was 17 on my SRAM, my max was only 12 in my Shimano. So that's where I would say 2x has the advantage if you need super small gears for climbing. And you have to keep in mind that now Shimano's 12-speed, they're gonna run 11-34 cassettes in Ultegra and Dura-Ace.
I'm very excited.
But especially in the triathlon space, 1x seems to make a ton of sense. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'd be glad to answer them. If you would like to check out more about 1x systems, let me know. We can dive deeper into anything else you want. Thanks for tuning in. In the meantime, go ride your bike.